In the deep heart of the galaxy, a council of alien races gathered inside a great hall of shining metal. The walls hummed with power, and the air was heavy with silence. They had come together to discuss one mission, one task that had frightened every race in the galaxy for centuries. A system of dying stars, known as the Veil of Shadows, waited at the edge of known space. No ship had ever entered and returned. Countless explorers, warriors, and scientists had tried, but every attempt ended in failure. The Council now wanted someone to go again. The mission was simple to say but impossible to complete. Enter the Veil of Shadows, discover what was hidden there, and come back alive. The Council leader, a tall insect-like creature named Chancellor Valor, spoke first. His voice clicked through the chamber. The galaxy needs to know what lies within the veil. It may hold a weapon. It may hold a cure. It may hold nothing. But until someone succeeds, we will never know. Who among us will accept this mission? His many eyes scanned the room, but no one answered. A heavy silence filled the chamber. Then one by one, the races began to speak. The reptilian dragons shook their heads, their tails swishing nervously. Our fleets cannot survive the storms within that cursed system. We will not go. The aquatic Silurians hissed through their water masks. Our kind does not risk lives on hopeless ventures. We refuse. The tall feathered Thalorians spread their wings and let out a cry. Even our most advanced scouts have vanished there. We will not waste more lives. The council chamber grew colder with every refusal. Every race found reasons to decline. Too dangerous. Too costly. Too impossible. Some races even mocked the idea, calling it suicide. Soon the room was filled with fear and shame. No one wanted to be the one who accepted the challenge. But in one corner of the chamber, a small group sat quietly. They were humans. Compared to the other races, they looked fragile. No scales, no wings, no shining armor. Just soft skin, simple uniforms, and steady eyes. Most races often ignored them, seeing humans as reckless newcomers in the galactic community. Yet on this day, as the refusals echoed, one human stood up. His name was Captain Elias Ward. He was not the tallest or the strongest in the room, but his voice carried like thunder. If no one else will take this mission, he said, then humanity will. The chamber erupted in disbelief. Murmurs and hisses filled the hall. The dragons laughed with sharp teeth showing. Humans, you are weak compared to us. If even we cannot survive the veil, what hope do you have? The Silurians scoffed. This is madness. Humans do not understand the danger. They throw themselves into battles they cannot win. The Thalorians shook their feathered heads. This is not courage. This is suicide. But Elias did not flinch. He looked at the council leader and repeated, louder this time, humanity accepts the mission. His words were steady, his eyes clear. The other humans with him nodded. They were ready. The silence that followed was heavy, like the air before a storm. Chancellor Valor clicked his mandibles, studying the human captain. Do you understand what you are saying? Every other race has refused. Entire fleets have been lost. No one has returned. Why would your people succeed where others failed? Elias stood tall, his hands resting behind his back. Because we do not turn away from the impossible. Because we believe that fear is not the end. We have faced storms, wars, and disasters. We are still here. If the mission must be done, then humanity will do it. Not because it is easy, but because it is necessary. His words struck the chamber like a spark in dry wood. Some races sneered, others whispered, and some stayed silent. For the first time, doubt touched their faces, not doubt about the mission, but doubt about their own courage. The council leader finally spoke again. Very well. If humanity accepts, then the mission is yours. You will leave within one cycle. May your bravery serve the galaxy. The humans bowed their heads. The decision was made. Outside the chamber, Whispers spread like fire. News of humanity's choice moved through every world. Some called them fools. Others called them reckless. But a few, in secret, began to call them heroes. Back on their ship, the human crew gathered around Captain Elias. They were not many, only a small group of men and women who had chosen to follow him. Their ship was not the largest or the most advanced. It was old, patched together from wars past. But the crew believed in one thing: if the galaxy needed answers, humanity would be the one to find them. As they prepared for departure, some felt fear, but no one turned back. Each of them carried the same fire that had burned in their captain's words. The impossible mission now belonged to them. And as their engines lit and the stars stretched before them, one thought filled their minds: every race had declined. Every world had turned away. But humanity had accepted without fear. And now, the unknown awaited. The human ship stood ready at the edge of the great station. Its hull was old, scratched, and patched with metal from many battles. Compared to the shining fleets of other species, it looked small and fragile, like a relic from a forgotten war. Yet inside that ship lived the spirit that no other race could copy. It was not the strongest, not the fastest, and not the most advanced. But it was human. And for this mission, that was enough. Captain Elias Ward walked through the narrow corridors, his boots striking the metal floor. He looked at every face he passed. Each one was young, but their eyes held the same fire. They were not forced to be here. They had chosen this. He stopped in the main hall, where his crew waited. The hall was cramped, filled with old chairs and flickering lights, but no one complained. They sat upright, ready to listen. Elias stood tall before them. "You know why we are here," he began, his voice steady. Every other race refused. They looked at the veil of shadows and saw only death. But we see something else. We see a challenge. We see a chance to prove what it means to be human. This mission will test us. It will push us to our limits. Some of us may not come back. But we will go forward together. We will not run. His words spread through the hall like a fire. Some of the younger crew clenched their fists. Others nodded, their jaws tight with determination. They were afraid, but fear did not stop them. That was what made them human. Among the crew stood Lieutenant Sarah Hale, the pilot. She was quick-minded, her eyes sharp and focused. Many called her reckless, but Elias trusted her instincts more than any machine. She had flown through storms where no one else would dare, and somehow she always came back. She looked at her captain and smiled. "Tell me where to fly, and I'll get us there," she said. Near her was Dr. Mira Jennings, the ship's medic. She was calm, gentle, and always thinking of others. Her hands could save lives even in the darkest moments. She had joined the mission not for glory but because she could not stand to see her people risk their lives without someone there to heal them. "I will keep us alive," she whispered softly, though her eyes burned with courage. Beside her was Chief Engineer Daniel Cross. His hands were scarred from years of work, his face marked with oil and burns. He had built machines from nothing and repaired engines in the middle of battle. The ship was old, but in his hands, it would endure. "She may be old," he said, patting the wall of the ship, "but she's ours. And she'll hold together as long as we need her." At the back stood Corporal Ryan Cole, a soldier who had fought in wars most of the galaxy had already forgotten. His body carried scars, but his heart carried discipline. He did not smile, he did not speak much, but everyone felt safer when he was near. He checked his weapons with quiet focus, ready for whatever the veil might throw at them. The rest of the crew were younger men and women, some barely out of training. Yet each one had chosen to be here. They knew the risks. They knew the mission. And still, they stayed. Outside, the galaxy whispered. Other races watched through hidden channels, shaking their heads. "Humans will fail," they said. "They are reckless. They do not understand what they are walking into." But none of those voices reached inside the ship. Within its walls, there was only one belief, that they would try, no matter the cost. Captain Elias looked at his crew one last time. He saw fear in their faces, but he also saw strength. He did not lie to them. He did not promise survival. He only promised that they would face the impossible together. "We are not the biggest race," he said. "We are not the strongest. But we are the ones who do not turn away. That is why we will succeed." The crew stood and saluted. In that moment, their doubts fell away. They were no longer individuals from different cities and families. They were one crew, one family, bound by one mission. Hours later, the ship's engines roared to life. The floor trembled, lights flickered, and a deep hum filled the corridors. Daniel grinned from the engine room, sweat running down his face. "Engines steady," he shouted. In the cockpit, Sarah gripped the controls, her eyes scanning the stars. "Course set for the Veil of Shadows," she said. Elias stood behind her, his hands resting firmly on the chair. "Then take us there," he ordered. Slowly, the ship pulled away from the station. The stars stretched before them, endless and cold. Behind them, the safety of the station grew smaller and smaller. Ahead of them waited the unknown. No one spoke. No one laughed. The weight of the mission pressed on them all. But still, not a single person turned back. Hours passed as they traveled deeper into space. The crew worked in silence, checking systems, reviewing maps, preparing weapons. Every sound, the hum of the engines, the beeps of the consoles, felt sharper in the heavy quiet. At night, when some rested, others stayed awake, staring out the windows at the black sea of stars. Dr. Mira walked the corridors, checking on each member. She saw fear in their eyes, but she also saw something stronger: hope. In the cockpit, Sarah tapped her fingers against the controls, whispering to herself, "We'll make it. We always do." In the engine room, Daniel tightened bolts and adjusted wires, muttering, "Come on, old girl, don't fail us now." Ryan sat in the weapons bay, cleaning his rifle over and over, his face hard as stone. And Elias stood alone in his quarters, looking at a small photograph of Earth. A picture of green fields and blue skies. He closed his eyes and whispered, "For them. For all of us." The ship moved quietly through the stars, a small speck against the endless dark. Other races would have laughed to see such a fragile craft attempt what mighty fleets could not. But this was the human way. They did not measure themselves by size or strength. They measured themselves by will. And in that small ship, will burned brighter than any sun. As they approached the first edge of the Veil of Shadows, sensors began to flicker. Strange signals touched the ship like ghostly hands. Lights dimmed. A low vibration filled the air. The crew looked at each other, and no one spoke. They knew this was only the beginning. But they also knew one thing with certainty: they were ready. The impossible mission had begun. The human ship moved deeper into the endless sea of stars. Behind them, the safe light of the galactic station had vanished, swallowed by distance. Ahead of them stretched only darkness, cold and silent, a road with no map. The Veil of Shadows was not far now. The crew felt the weight of every passing hour. They worked in silence, checking systems again and again, though they all knew no preparation could make this journey safe. Captain Elias Ward stood in the cockpit, his eyes fixed on the growing black cloud that filled their view. It looked like a storm frozen in space, a swirling mass of dust, lightning, and shadows. It had no clear edges, no safe paths, only chaos. Countless ships had vanished inside it. And now humanity was heading straight toward it. "Engines steady," Sarah Hale reported from the pilot's chair. Her hands moved across the controls with sharp precision, though her jaw was tight. "But sensors are failing. I can't get a clear reading." Daniel's voice crackled from the engine room. "It's not the ship. Something out there is scrambling our systems. Never seen anything like it." Mira Jennings checked her medical kit again, though she had already checked it 3 times. She whispered to herself, "We're not even inside yet, and it already feels like death is waiting." Ryan Cole sat in the weapons bay, sharpening a knife slowly. His face was calm, but his eyes stayed on the screens showing the storm ahead. He had fought in many battles, but nothing like this. Elias put a hand on Sarah's shoulder. "Stay on course," he said. "Don't fight the storm yet. Let's see what it does." Sarah nodded, but her knuckles turned white on the controls. Minutes stretched into hours. The storm loomed larger and larger until it filled every window. The crew could feel it pressing against their minds, a silent weight that made the air feel heavier. Then, without warning, the ship trembled. A shockwave slammed against the hull, throwing some crew to the floor. Lights flickered, alarms blared. Daniel's voice shouted through the comms. "Hull pressure rising. Shields are holding, but not for long." Sarah gritted her teeth, pulling the ship upward. "Storm currents," she shouted. "It's dragging us in." The ship spun, tossed like a leaf in a raging ocean. Sparks flew from the consoles. Mira rushed to help a young crew member who had hit his head. Ryan locked himself into position, gripping the weapons as if ready for war. The storm roared around them, though there was no sound in space. Only the ship's groans, the alarms, and the pounding of their own hearts. Elias held onto the captain's chair, his voice calm even as the ship shook. "Hold steady, Sarah. Don't fight every pull. Ride it. Let the storm guide you." Sarah's eyes widened, but she understood. She loosened her grip, stopped forcing the ship, and began moving with the storm's currents instead of against them. Slowly, the spinning lessened. The ship was still being dragged, but now it moved smoother, like a boat riding waves instead of breaking against them. "Stabilizing," Sarah breathed. "But we're being pulled deeper." Elias nodded. "That's where we need to go." The crew looked at him, shocked, but no one argued. They had known the risks. There was no turning back now. Hours passed as they drifted inside the storm. Strange lights flashed outside the windows, colors no human eyes had ever seen before. Shadows twisted, forming shapes that looked almost alive. Whispers filled the comms, though no one was speaking. Mira pressed her hands to her ears. "Do you hear that?" Voices. Daniel cursed over the radio. "It's interference, just interference." But even he did not sound convinced. Sarah's face grew pale. "They're saying my name," she whispered. Elias put a hand on her chair. "Ignore it. Whatever this storm is, it wants to break us. Don't let it." The whispers grew louder for a time, then faded into silence. The crew did not speak of it again, but the fear lingered in their eyes. Suddenly, the sensors lit up. Ryan's voice came sharp from the weapons bay. "Objects ahead. Multiple. Closing fast." On the screens, dark shapes appeared, moving within the storm like hunters. They were not rocks, not natural. Their movements were too precise. "Are those ships?" Sarah asked, her voice tight. Daniel cursed again. "If they are, they're not alive. Power readings are strange. Cold. Mechanical." The shapes drew closer, and soon the crew could see them clearly through the storm. Machines. Drones made of black metal, their eyes glowing faintly red. They moved without sound, without hesitation, circling the human ship like predators. "Weapons ready," Ryan said, his rifle clutched in his hands. The drones did not fire. They only circled, as if studying the humans. Elias narrowed his eyes. "They're watching us. Testing us." One drone suddenly darted forward, slamming into the ship's side. The hull groaned, sparks flying. Alarms screamed. Ryan opened fire, shots ripping into the dark shape. The drone exploded in silence, fragments scattering into the storm. The others moved closer now, their red eyes glowing brighter. "Here they come," Ryan shouted. The cockpit filled with flashing lights as drones attacked from all sides. Sarah swerved hard, dodging one, but another slammed against the hull. Daniel shouted over the comms, "Shields at 60%. We can't take much more." Mira braced herself, holding onto her kit, shouting to the younger crew, "Stay down, hold on." Elias stood firm, his voice cutting through the chaos. We don't run. Sarah, keep moving. Ryan, focus your fire. The battle raged. One by one, drones crashed against them, some destroyed by Ryan's shots, others breaking themselves against the shields. The storm howled around them, but still the humans fought. Finally, after what felt like hours, the last drone was destroyed. The ship floated in silence once more, smoke filling the air. The crew sat breathing hard, their faces pale and sweaty. Daniel's voice came weakly over the comms. Hull is damaged, but we're alive. Barely. Sarah wiped sweat from her forehead. They weren't trying to kill us, she said quietly. They could have destroyed us if they wanted. They were testing us. Elias nodded slowly. Yes. This storm, these machines, it's all a test. And we just passed the first part. The crew looked at him in silence. None of them spoke, but the thought was clear in every mind. If this was only the beginning, what waited deeper inside the veil? The ship drifted forward, deeper into the storm, the shadows closing around them. The journey had truly begun. The storm did not end. It grew heavier as the human ship pushed deeper into the veil of shadows. Lightning tore across the black clouds, ripping holes of light before vanishing again. Strange currents pulled at the hull, twisting the ship in every direction. The crew held their stations, sweat on their faces, fear in their eyes, but no one abandoned their post. For hours they fought the storm itself, dodging meteors of burning rock that appeared out of nowhere, avoiding massive clouds of glowing dust that could tear the ship apart in seconds. Each time they thought they were safe, something new rose against them. Shields down to 40%, Daniel reported, his voice tight. Sparks flew around him as engines roared and panels shook. If we take one more hit like that, we're finished. Sarah Hale pulled the ship hard to the left, her hands moving faster than thought. A massive spiral of lightning ripped across space, bright enough to blind them. The ship rolled, narrowly escaping. That was too close, Sarah muttered, her heart pounding. Ryan Cole sat in the weapons bay, his rifle gripped in both hands, though no target showed on his screens. He hated waiting. He wanted something he could fight, something he could shoot, but the storm gave him nothing. It was a battle without an enemy, and that made it worse. Mira Jennings rushed between crew members, checking wounds and strapping bruised arms. A young crewman looked at her with wide eyes. We're not going to make it, are we? Mira held his hand tightly. As long as we breathe, we fight. Don't give up. Elias Ward stood in the center of the cockpit, his jaw set. His eyes never left the storm. He knew this was only the beginning. He could feel it in his bones. The veil was alive. It was watching them. And soon, it would strike harder. Then, as if answering his thought, the storm split apart. Ahead of them, space cleared, but not into peace. A massive shape drifted before them, black as the void, covered in jagged spikes of metal. It was not a planet. It was not an asteroid. It was something else. The crew stared in silence. The ship was bigger than anything they had ever seen. It looked dead, a broken husk, but the sight made their blood run cold. Sarah whispered, What is that?" Daniel's voice came through, low and grim. "It's a ship. Or it used to be." The vessel was ancient, its hull cracked and shattered, but faint lights still glowed within, flickering like dying stars. It floated silently, waiting in the storm. As they drew closer, Ryan's sensors screamed with warnings. Movement. Multiple contacts. They're coming from that thing. Out of the husk, shapes emerged. Not the small drones from before. These were larger, armored, built like predators. Their eyes glowed red, their claws of steel sharp as blades. They moved with deadly purpose, forming a circle around the human ship. Ryan lifted his weapon, his voice sharp. Targets locked. Permission to fire. Elias raised a hand. Wait. The machines did not attack immediately. They hovered, their eyes fixed on the human ship. Then, as one, they lunged. The first slammed into the shields, shaking the ship like a hammer blow. Sparks filled the cockpit, alarms screamed. Daniel shouted, "Shields at 25%. Another hit, and they'll break through. Now!" Elias shouted. Ryan opened fire, his shots tearing through the first attacker. The machine exploded into fragments of metal. But two more came at once, slamming into the ship's side. Hull plating bent, alarms shrieked, air hissed as cracks opened. Mira ran to seal a breach, her hands shaking but steady. "Hold it together," she yelled to the crew. Sarah pulled the ship into a sharp dive, the machines following like wolves chasing prey. Her teeth clenched, her eyes burned with focus. "If they want us, they'll have to catch us." She spun the ship through the storm, weaving between meteors, using the lightning as cover. The machines followed, but not all survived. One struck a burning rock and shattered, another was ripped apart by lightning. Ryan's shots tore down another, but more came, endless, pouring out of the dead ship. Elias gripped the chair, his voice cutting through the chaos. "They're guarding it. That ship isn't just wreckage, it's a warning. They don't want anyone getting near it." Sarah shouted over the alarms, "Then why are we going straight toward it?" Elias looked at the dead vessel, his eyes steady. "Because if they don't want us to go there, then that's exactly where we need to be." The crew stared at him, fear flashing in their eyes, but none of them argued. That was why they followed him, because when others turned away, Elias Ward walked forward. The ship shook again as another machine slammed into the hull. Daniel's voice cracked through the comms. "Hull breach on deck 2. I can't hold her together if this keeps up." "Then we finish this fast," Elias said. "Ryan, clear us a path. Sarah, take us inside." Sarah's eyes widened. "Inside that thing? Are you insane?" Elias did not blink. "We can't survive this fight. But if we get inside, we might find answers, or at least shelter. Do it." Sarah's hands tightened on the controls. She muttered, "You'd better be right," then pushed the ship forward. Ryan's shots ripped apart two more machines, explosions lighting the storm. The path opened for a moment, and Sarah dove into it, guiding the ship toward the broken hull of the ancient vessel. The machines howled after them, but they were too slow. The human ship plunged into the darkness of the dead giant. Silence fell for a moment as they entered. The storm's noise faded, replaced by the groan of ancient metal around them. Lights flickered weakly across the vast corridors of the massive ship, shadows stretching like claws. The crew sat frozen, catching their breath, hearts pounding in their chests. Mira whispered, "What is this place?" Elias stood tall, his eyes scanning the dark. "The first threat," he said quietly. "And something tells me it's only the beginning." The human ship floated silently inside the broken giant. The storm outside roared on, but in here the air felt heavy and still, like stepping into the lungs of something long dead. The corridors stretched endlessly, wide enough to swallow 10 human ships side by side, their walls covered in strange carvings and broken wires that glowed faintly like veins of dying fire. Dust floated in the air, though there was no gravity to hold it. The crew stared in silence, their voices caught in their throats. Sarah whispered from the cockpit, "This ship is not natural. It was built by something far older than us." Daniel's voice came low through the comms. "These systems, they're beyond anything I've seen. Even damaged, even half dead, they're still running on a level of power I can't understand." Myra's eyes scanned the dark halls through the window. "Then why is it abandoned? Who built this, and where did they go?" No one answered her. The silence itself felt alive, pressing on their minds like a heavy weight. Elias stood tall at the center of the cockpit. His jaw tightened. "Prepare a landing team. We're going inside." The crew looked at him with shock. Sarah spun her chair around. "Captain, are you serious? We barely survived the storm, we're surrounded by machines that want us dead, and now you want us to step into that thing?" Elias met her eyes without flinching. "Yes, We didn't come this far to turn back. If we want answers, they're in there. Ryan Cole stood at the back of the room, checking his rifle with cold precision. I'll go, he said simply. His voice carried no hesitation, no doubt. He was a soldier, and he knew this was his place. Mira swallowed hard, her hands tightening around her medical kit. If you go, I go. You'll need someone to keep you alive. Daniel groaned over the radio. And I'll make sure the ship doesn't fall apart while you're playing heroes. But I swear, Captain, if you don't come back, this old bird isn't flying itself home. Sarah shook her head, frustration on her face, but finally she sighed. Fine. But you'd better bring me back something worth all this. Minutes later, Elias, Ryan, Mira, and 2 younger crew members suited up and stepped into the airlock. The doors opened, and they drifted into the vast dark corridors of the abandoned ship. Their boots clicked softly on the metal floor, the sound echoing like whispers. Their flashlights cut through the shadows, revealing walls covered in carvings. Strange symbols stretched across every surface, spirals and lines and marks that seemed to move when the light touched them. Mira stopped, staring. These symbols, they're warnings. Elias looked closer. The carvings showed pictures, strange shapes that looked like stars, then storms, then ships being torn apart. At the end of the carving, figures with humanoid shapes knelt before something bright, something hidden in the shadows. Ryan's voice came low and steady. Whatever this is, it doesn't want us here. The crew continued deeper, passing broken doors and shattered halls. In one chamber they found machines, smaller than the drones outside, lying in pieces across the floor. Some looked destroyed in battle, others looked like they had simply stopped moving. Mira knelt beside one, touching the cold metal. These were left behind. This ship didn't just die, it was abandoned. The crew moved on, their lights falling on rows of empty chambers. Inside, glass pods stood cracked and broken. Dust filled them, but within some were skeletons, thin and long, nothing like humans. They were the remains of a species no one had ever seen before. Mira covered her mouth. This was their ship, and they're gone. Elias looked at the broken pods, his eyes dark. Not gone. Wiped out. Something killed them. And whatever it was, it left a warning for anyone who came after. Suddenly, Ryan raised his rifle. Movement, he said sharply. The crew froze, their lights flashing across the hall. At the far end, a shadow moved. A figure stood tall and thin, its eyes glowing faint blue. For a moment it looked alive. Then the lights revealed the truth. It was not a living being, but a machine shaped like one, its body covered in the same strange carvings as the walls. It did not move closer. It only stood there, watching them. Elias raised his hand, signaling the crew to stay calm. Don't fire. Let's see what it does. The machine tilted its head, then slowly raised one arm. On the wall beside it, the carvings glowed brighter, lines of light connecting to form new symbols. The crew watched in silence as words appeared across the surface in a language they could not read. But their translators flickered, struggling, and finally spat out a broken message. Do not continue. Death waits. Mira stepped back, her heart racing. It's a warning. Just like I said. They're telling us to leave. Ryan's grip on his rifle tightened. Or they're trying to scare us. Elias stared at the glowing wall. His voice was steady. Maybe both. The machine lowered its arm and then, without a sound, it faded into darkness. The light vanished, leaving the hall cold again. For a long moment, no one spoke. Finally Elias turned to his crew. We're not leaving. If this is a warning, then it means there's something worth warning us about. And that's what we came here to find. The crew exchanged uneasy glances, but no one argued. They pressed forward, deeper into the ship. Soon they reached the central chamber, a vast open space filled with broken pillars and shattered machines. In the center stood a giant door, sealed shut, covered in carvings brighter than any they had seen before. The symbols burned with pale light, and the same words echoed across their translators. Turn back. Do not enter. Final death beyond this point. Elias stood before the door, his face lit by the glow. His voice was quiet but firm. This is what they were hiding. And this is what we came for. Mira whispered, fear in her eyes. Captain, what if we open it and release something worse? What if they sealed it for a reason? Elias looked at her. His gaze was steady, unshaken. Then we'll face it. Humanity doesn't turn back. Ryan stepped beside him, his rifle ready. Then open it. The chamber fell silent as Elias placed his hand on the glowing door. The carvings pulsed brighter, the ground shook, and somewhere deep in the ship, gears began to turn. The ancient vessel was waking. And the humans had just crossed a line that no one else had dared. The giant door rumbled as Captain Elias Ward pressed his hand against its glowing surface. The symbols carved across it pulsed brighter, flooding the chamber with pale light. The ground shook beneath their boots, dust falling from the high ceilings like rain. Metal groaned deep within the walls, and the sound echoed through the vast corridors of the ancient vessel. For a long moment nothing happened, then the light dimmed, and silence returned. The crew stood frozen, holding their breath. Sarah's voice crackled through the comms from the cockpit. Captain, what's happening? Our sensors just spiked. I'm reading massive power surges coming from inside that ship. Elias did not answer right away. He stared at the sealed door, his jaw tight, his instincts warning him that something was coming. Ryan Cole tightened his grip on his rifle, stepping forward with steady eyes. Whatever it is, it's waking up. The silence broke with a deep vibration, like a heartbeat rising from the core of the ship. The door split down the middle, grinding slowly apart. A cold wave of air spilled out, carrying the smell of rust and old ash. Behind the door, the chamber stretched into darkness. And then they heard it. Footsteps, heavy and mechanical, growing louder with each second. Mira Jennings clutched her medical kit against her chest, her eyes wide with fear. Something's coming. The first figure stepped out of the shadows. It was a machine, taller than any human, its body black and jagged, its limbs sharp like blades. Its eyes glowed with red fire, and when it moved, the sound was like grinding stone. Behind it, more followed. Dozens, then hundreds. They marched with perfect order, filling the chamber, their eyes all turning to the humans. Ryan raised his weapon, his finger near the trigger. Orders, Captain. Elias stood firm, his voice calm though his heart pounded. Hold your fire. Not yet. The machines stopped in formation, their gaze fixed on the crew. For a moment, the silence felt endless. Then one stepped forward, larger than the rest. Its body was plated in thicker armor, its head crowned with jagged metal. When it spoke, the sound was not a voice but a thunder of grinding gears, translated through the human suits. Intruders. You have broken the seal. You will be judged. Myra's breath caught in her throat. Judged? By what? The machine's eyes flared. By survival. At its signal, the machines moved. Not all at once, but enough to strike fear. A wave of them broke formation and charged forward, their claws scraping the floor, their movements fast and deadly. Ryan fired instantly, shots tearing into the first attacker. Sparks burst from its chest as it fell, but 3 more replaced it. Elias shouted, "Fall back! Don't let them surround you!" The crew retreated into the corridor, their flashlights swinging wildly across the walls. The machines followed, their claws tearing into metal, their red eyes burning brighter. Sarah's voice shouted through the comms, panic in her tone. "Captain, I'm reading dozens of moving contacts closing on your position. Get back to the ship now." "Working on it." Elias barked, firing his sidearm at another machine. The bullets sparked against armor, but Ryan's heavier rifle finished the job, blasting it apart. Mira dragged one of the younger crew members behind cover, her hands shaking as she patched a cut on his arm. "Stay with me. You're not dying here." Daniel's voice thundered from the ship. "Captain, I can reroute power to the weapon systems, But I need time. Buy me a minute. You've got it, Elias shouted. The crew fought their way back through the corridors, the machines chasing them with unrelenting fury. Every turn, every hall, more of them appeared, rising from broken walls and hidden chambers as if the whole ship itself was alive. Ryan moved like a wall of steel, covering the crew with precise shots, his rifle cutting down attackers one after another. But for each one that fell, two more rose. This isn't a fight we can win, Mira cried. Elias's eyes burned with determination. Then it's a fight we survive. They burst into the docking chamber where their ship waited, its engines glowing faintly in the dark. Sarah's voice shouted, "Hurry! They're all around you." The machines poured into the chamber, filling every corner. Their red eyes glowed like fireflies of death. Elias raised his hand. "All aboard. Now." The crew scrambled up the ramp, Ryan firing non-stop to cover them. He was the last to climb aboard, slamming the hatch shut as claws scraped against it. "Go! Go!" Sarah launched the ship into motion, engines roaring as they tore free from the chamber. Machines leapt onto the hull, claws stabbing into the metal, but Daniel shouted from engineering, "I've got a surprise for them." He slammed a control, and a surge of energy pulsed through the outer plating. The machines screamed as electricity ripped across their bodies, hurling them into the void. "That's right," Daniel roared, sweat on his face. "This old bird still has some tricks." The ship blasted out of the ancient vessel, back into the raging storm of the Veil. But the machines were not finished. From the broken giant, more poured into the storm, flying on wings of black metal, their red eyes chasing the humans like a swarm of demons. Sarah gritted her teeth, throwing the ship into wild maneuvers, lightning flashing all around them. "They're not letting us go." Ryan strapped into the weapons, firing at the swarm, his shots lighting up the storm with explosions. Mira held onto the walls, steadying the wounded, whispering prayers under her breath. Elias stood behind Sarah, his voice strong and steady. "Keep going. No matter what. We make it out of this storm, or we die trying." For every machine they destroyed, more appeared, but slowly, the swarm began to thin. The storm itself fought them too, tearing machines apart with lightning and meteors. The humans pushed forward, bleeding, bruised, but alive. Finally, after what felt like forever, the swarm broke. The machines fell back, vanishing into the storm. The crew sat in silence, their chests heaving, their bodies trembling with exhaustion. Sarah whispered, Why did they stop?" Elias's eyes narrowed. He knew the answer, though he did not speak it aloud. They hadn't stopped because the humans had beaten them. They had stopped because the test wasn't over. Elias turned to his crew, his voice quiet but firm. "This was only the beginning. Whatever built those machines, it's still waiting for us." The crew exchanged fearful glances, but no one spoke against him. The ship drifted deeper into the storm, carrying them toward a truth that no other race had dared to face. And far behind them, in the dead husk of the ancient vessel, the machines watched, their red eyes glowing in silence. The storm around them finally calmed, but the silence that followed was not peaceful. The human ship drifted in the void, battered and scarred, its hull scorched with claw marks and burns from the battle. Inside, the crew sat in weary silence, their faces pale and their eyes heavy from the fight. Yet none of them spoke of surrender. They had survived what no other species had even dared to face. But Elias Ward, their captain, knew this was only the start. He stood at the front of the cockpit, his hands gripping the railing as he stared out into the shifting clouds of the Veil. "We are not done," he said quietly. His voice was calm, but the weight of it spread across the crew like a spark of fire. Ryan Cole, the soldier, leaned against the wall, his armor dented and his rifle scorched from overuse. "You're right, Captain. They were testing us. That wasn't a battle. It was a warning shot." Mira Jennings sat nearby, wrapping bandages around the arm of a younger crew member, her own face lined with exhaustion. She looked up, her voice soft but firm. "Then what are we supposed to do? We barely made it out alive." What if we can't win? Elias turned toward her, his eyes steady. We don't have to win, Mira. We have to endure. That's what makes us human. When others turn away, we go forward. Sarah, still at the controls, gave a bitter laugh. Endure? Captain, we're flying a ship held together by tape and prayer. One more storm, one more swarm of machines, and we'll be nothing but dust. Daniel's voice echoed from engineering, rough but determined. Maybe. But I've patched ships worse than this. She'll fly. As long as we keep pushing her, she'll fly. Sarah glanced back at Elias. And if we keep pushing ourselves? What happens when we can't keep going? Elias's voice hardened. Then we keep going anyway. Because if we don't, no one will. The others ran. Every other species looked at this mission and said it couldn't be done. They chose safety. They chose fear. But we're here because humanity doesn't back down. The words hung in the air like steel. For a long moment no one spoke. Then Ryan stepped forward, his expression grim but proud. He's right. If they wanted us broken, they would have finished us. Instead, they gave us a choice. Turn back, or press forward. And I'll be damned if I let machines, or storms, or ghosts scare me off. Mira nodded slowly, her fear still visible, but her eyes gaining strength. Then we press forward. Not because it's safe. But because it isn't. That's what makes us different. Sarah sighed, shaking her head, but her lips curved into a faint smile. You're all insane. But if we're going to die, we might as well make it worth the story. Daniel laughed through the comms. Now that's the spirit. Just don't blow any more holes in my engines, and we might even make it to the end. The crew's tension eased for a moment, but then Elias raised his hand, his face serious. Listen to me. What we faced was nothing compared to what's coming. That ancient ship, those machines, they weren't protecting themselves. They were guarding something. And now they know we're here. They'll be waiting. But that doesn't matter. Because we didn't come here to turn back. We came here to prove that humanity belongs out here, in the places no one else dares to go. We came here to prove we don't give up. The words struck deep into every heart. Ryan straightened his back, his hand resting on his rifle like a promise. Myra's trembling hands steadied, her fear hardening into quiet courage. Sarah's tired eyes softened, her fingers dancing over the controls with new purpose. Daniel's voice carried warmth through the speakers. Then let's prove it, Captain. Let's show them what humans can do. Elias turned back toward the stars, his jaw set. We will. No matter what waits for us. Hours passed as they repaired what they could. The storm eased, giving them a fragile path forward. The silence of the veil stretched around them, but it was not empty. Every sensor readouts hummed with strange energy. Something massive stirred in the distance, beyond the mist. The crew gathered in the cockpit, watching as faint lights flickered ahead, like distant beacons. Mira whispered, "Is that another ship?" Sarah shook her head, her voice hushed. Not one ship. Many. A whole fleet. The lights grew brighter, revealing shapes half hidden in the fog. Vast silhouettes stretched across the void, ships larger than mountains, their surfaces glowing faintly with alien symbols. They hung in silence, unmoving, like sleeping giants. Elias felt the weight of them pressing on his chest. These were not like the broken vessel they had just escaped. These were alive, awake, and watching. Ryan's eyes narrowed as his hand tightened on his rifle. So this is it. The real test. Mira whispered, "There's no way we can fight them. They'll crush us in seconds." Elias's voice was steady. "Maybe. But we're not here to fight them. We're here to show them who we are." The crew looked at him in silence, the fear in their eyes balanced by the spark of something greater, resolve. For the first time, none of them doubted. They knew the path ahead was death, but they also knew that turning back would mean something far worse. It would mean proving that humanity was just like the others. Weak. Afraid. Beaten before the fight began. Elias raised his hand, pointing forward. Set course for the fleet. Full speed. Sarah hesitated only a moment before her hands moved, guiding the ship toward the towering shadows. The engines roared, carrying them into the unknown. The silence of the crew was not fear now. It was determination. They were one crew, one mission, one will. And as they flew deeper into the veil, into the heart of danger itself, their resolve burned brighter than the storm. Humanity had been tested. And humanity would not break. The fleet of alien ships loomed in the fog like titans of stone, their massive frames pulsing with strange light. The human vessel, scarred and weary, moved toward them like a small shadow against a mountain. Inside the cockpit, the crew sat in silence, each of them knowing this moment was different from all the battles before. This was not a fight to escape or survive. This was something else, something greater. Captain Elias Ward stood at the front, his eyes locked on the largest ship at the center of the fleet. Its surface glowed with symbols that shifted like fire, as if alive. He felt its gaze pressing down on them, though no face could be seen. That, Elias said quietly, is the final gate. The words sent a chill through the crew. Sarah gripped the controls tighter, her knuckles white. A gate to what, Captain? Elias shook his head. I don't know. But it's what they've been guarding. Everything we've faced was meant to push us here. Ryan Cole checked his rifle again, even though he knew it would mean little against ships the size of cities. His voice was firm. Then whatever waits beyond that gate, we'll meet it head-on. Mira Jennings, sitting beside the injured crew member she had been caring for since the last fight, whispered, "And if we don't come back?" Elias's eyes softened for a moment. Then at least humanity will know we tried. We went further than anyone else. That matters. The ship drew closer, and the massive vessel at the center began to stir. Pieces of its hull shifted, unfolding like wings. A beam of light spilled into the void, stretching toward the human ship like a path. Sarah's eyes widened. They're opening it for us. The light shimmered with strange energy, flickering like liquid fire. The crew felt it pulling at them, not with force, but with something deeper, like a voice whispering inside their minds. It did not speak in words, but in feelings: fear, courage, choice. Elias steadied himself, his voice firm. This is it. The final gate. Beyond it, the truth of why we were called here. Ryan frowned. Or the end. Both, Elias said simply. The ship entered the beam, and instantly the world around them dissolved. The storm, the fleet, even the stars vanished. The crew gasped as their ship floated inside a vast space of light, endless and blinding, yet strangely calm. Shapes formed in the brightness. Towers, arches, bridges that stretched forever. It was a place beyond worlds, a construct of something far older than any race they knew. Myra's voice trembled. It's beautiful. But before they could take it in, the light shifted, and from it emerged figures. They were not machines like before, nor ships, but tall beings of light and shadow, their forms shifting like fire and water. Their voices thundered without sound, reaching directly into the minds of the crew. You have come where no other dared. You have crossed storms, faced death, and awakened the guardians. Tell us, why do you continue? The crew exchanged looks, each of them feeling the question press into their very hearts. Ryan's jaw tightened. Because turning back isn't who we are. Humans keep going, even when we're afraid. Mira added, her voice soft but strong, because someone has to try. If not us, then who? Daniel's voice crackled from engineering, steady as iron. Because survival isn't enough. Living means risking everything for something greater. Sarah closed her eyes, then whispered, because if we stop here, then humanity never learns what waits beyond. And I'd rather die knowing than live in the dark. The beings of light turned their gaze to Elias. He stood tall, unflinching. We are human. We don't claim to be the strongest, or the smartest, or the oldest. But we endure. When others run, we stay. When others break, we stand. That is our answer. We came because the impossible mission was ours to take. The silence that followed was vast and heavy. The beings shimmered, their forms pulsing brighter. Then their voices filled the chamber again, shaking the ship. Others turned away. Others saw only danger. But you carry fire in your hearts. Fire that does not bow, fire that does not break. This is why you were chosen. This is why you stand at the final gate. The light around them shifted once more, and in the distance, a vast archway appeared, larger than planets, glowing with raw energy. Beyond it stretched a darkness deeper than space itself, a void alive with stars unseen, worlds unknown. Mira gasped, tears in her eyes. That's another universe. Elias's chest tightened. The next frontier. But the beings of light raised their hands, and the path closed. Their voices grew softer, yet sharper. The choice is not ours. The choice is yours. Step through the final gate, and humanity will walk where none have gone before. Step back and live, but know you turned away from destiny. What will you decide? The crew froze, the weight of the question pressing into their souls. Sarah whispered, "If we go, we may never come back. If we stay, we live. But what does that mean?" Ryan's voice cut through the silence. "It means we choose fear. And I won't do that." Myra's hands shook, but her voice did not. "Then we go. Not because it's safe. But because it isn't." Daniel laughed, tired but full of spirit. "The engines are screaming, the hull's falling apart, and we're running on scraps. But if this is the end, then let's make it worth it." Elias looked at his crew, his family. They were bruised, bloodied, half-broken. But their eyes burned with the same fire. He nodded once. "Then it's decided. Humanity steps forward." The ship turned toward the archway, its engines rumbling like a heartbeat. The final gate pulsed brighter, its light flooding every shadow. The beings of light watched in silence, their glowing forms bending as if in respect. Sarah gritted her teeth, her hands steady now. "Here we go." The ship surged forward, plunging into the heart of the gate. The light swallowed them whole, brighter than any sun. For a moment there was nothing, no sound, no sight, no time. And then, beyond the light, something new began. The human ship burst through the blinding light of the final gate, and for a moment the crew thought they had been destroyed. Their senses were overwhelmed by brilliance, soundless and endless, until suddenly the light vanished, and they were surrounded by a vast and impossible sight. Space stretched out before them, but it was not the space they knew. The stars burned in strange colors, blue, green, crimson, and gold, spinning in patterns that defied logic. Planets hovered where they should not, chained to invisible currents, glowing with energy that no human mind could explain. The void itself shimmered, alive with motion, as if the universe here was breathing. Mira gasped, her hands pressed to the glass. This isn't our galaxy. This isn't even our universe." Daniel's voice trembled over the comms. "Engines are picking up readings I've never seen before. This place, it runs on different laws." Ryan gripped his rifle, his usual calm shaken. "Then what are we standing in? What kind of place is this?" A voice echoed in their minds again, but this time it was softer, not booming like before. The beings of light had not followed them through. This voice was different. It came from the stars themselves, from the strange current of space around them. "You stand in the forge," it whispered. "The place where worlds are born." The crew froze, their breaths caught in their throats. Elias Ward narrowed his eyes. "The forge? Born of what?" The voice answered, calm and endless. "Long before your kind, long before the others, we built this place. Here, stars are shaped. Here, life is seeded. The forge is the beginning of all things." Myra's eyes widened. You mean, this is where the universe comes from? The voice seemed to smile, though it had no face. This is where universes are tested. Each race that comes here is offered a choice. To create, or to destroy. To carry the fire, or let it fade. Sarah's voice shook as she stared at the glowing currents outside. The others who turned away, they didn't just reject the mission. They rejected this truth. They weren't ready. The voice echoed gently. They feared the responsibility. For to walk into the forge is to hold the power of shaping what comes next. Not for one world, but for all worlds. Silence fell heavy inside the ship. The truth was more than they had imagined. Humanity was not fighting for survival anymore. They were standing at the edge of creation itself. Elias's voice was quiet but steady. So this was the real test. Not to survive the storms, not to fight the guardians. It was to prove we would face this moment without fear. The stars pulsed brighter, as if in agreement. Yes. You came where others fled. You chose to endure when others turned away. That is why you were brought here. Now the fire is yours to carry. Ryan shook his head, his voice rough. Fire? You mean creation itself? We're soldiers, explorers, engineers, not gods. The voice softened. You are human. That is enough. For creation is not about power, but about courage. The courage to build when destruction is easier. The courage to hope when despair is stronger. Myra's eyes filled with tears. This is what humanity has always done. Through war, through pain, through loss, we still build. We still hope. Elias felt the truth of it burn inside him. He thought of the ruined earth he had left behind, scarred by conflict, but still alive, still pushing forward. He thought of the crew who had chosen this path, who had stepped through the gate knowing death could be waiting. And he knew the voice was right. Humanity's greatest strength was not in weapons or knowledge. It was in their resolve to create meaning where none existed. Elias looked at his crew, their faces lit by the strange light of the forge. Then we accept, he said. We'll carry the fire. Not just for us, but for all who came before and all who will come after. The forge trembled, the stars shifting like waves in an ocean. The voice grew louder, warmer, filling the ship with energy. Then it is done. Humanity is chosen. The forge is yours to guide, yours to guard. But know this, the fire can burn bright, or it can consume. The choice will always remain with you. Suddenly the ship shuddered as a massive structure appeared in the distance. It was a colossal sphere, glowing with veins of light, larger than any planet. It pulsed like a heart, sending ripples of energy through the strange universe. Sarah whispered, her voice full of awe. That's the core of the forge. Daniel's instruments screamed with readings beyond measure. It's alive. It's like a star, but not. It's pure creation. Elias stared at it, his chest heavy with both fear and pride. That's the truth. The forge is not just a place. It's a living engine. And now, it's ours. The crew sat in silence, the weight of their responsibility pressing on them. Beyond the light of the forge, new worlds shimmered, waiting to be born. Humanity had been chosen to decide how the fire would be used. And for the first time since the mission began, Elias felt not just fear, but hope. For in this place, humanity had found the truth, that even at the edge of the impossible, even standing before the power of creation itself, they did not turn away. They stepped forward. And now, the future itself waited in their hands. The ship floated before the glowing heart of the forge, its colossal light pulsing like the beat of a living star. The human crew sat in silence, their faces lit by the golden glow, each of them feeling the weight of the choice pressing down on their souls. They had crossed storms, fought enemies, stood against fear, and walked through the final gate, only to stand here at the center of creation itself. Elias Ward, their captain, gripped the edge of the console, his eyes never leaving the core. It pulsed as if waiting, like a question without words. "This is it," Elias whispered. "This is why no other race came this far. They didn't want the burden. They didn't want the responsibility." Ryan's voice was steady but heavy, the soldier's tone carrying both pride and fear. "And now it's in our hands. What do we do with it, Captain? Do we light the fire, or let it die?" Mira looked at the core, tears filling her eyes as she thought of Earth, of the people who would never know the journey they had taken. "If we walk away, we waste everything. Not just our fight, not just this mission, but the chance to give something greater to all who come after us." Daniel's voice crackled from engineering, worn but firm. "But if we make the wrong choice, we could doom not just us, but everything. Creation and destruction, two sides of the same fire." Sarah's hands trembled on the controls. "So it comes down to this. Not survival. Not victory. But legacy." Elias stood tall, turning to face them all. His voice was calm, yet full of fire. "Humanity has always been imperfect. We've fought wars, we've destroyed our own world, we've made mistakes. But we've also rebuilt, again and again. We've created art, hope, families, futures. That's who we are. We fall, but we rise. Always." He stepped closer to the viewing glass, his eyes fixed on the forge. "If this power is truly meant for us, then we use it the only way we know how. Not to rule, not to burn, but to build. To create, even when it's hard. To leave behind something better." The crew felt the weight of his words, and slowly they nodded, one by one. Ryan lowered his rifle, and exhaled. "Then we light the fire." Mira smiled softly, though her tears still fell. "For Earth. For all of us." Daniel's voice came over the comm, steady as stone. "Engines ready. Systems linked to the forge core. Just give the word, Captain." Elias placed his hand on the console, and the ship connected to the massive energy around them. The forge stirred, its light growing brighter, flooding the strange sky with color. A voice, the same that had spoken to them before, echoed in their minds one last time. "So it is chosen. Humanity carries the fire. Guard it well, for creation is both gift and test." The core blazed, and from its heart, streams of light spread out like rivers, flowing across the endless void. Stars flared to life where there had been only darkness. Worlds spun into being, glowing like newborn flames. Galaxies unfolded before their eyes, as if painted by invisible hands. The crew watched in silence, awestruck, as creation itself unfolded around them. Sarah whispered, "We're making a universe." Ryan shook his head slowly. "Not gods. Just humans. But look at what humans can do." Elias felt pride swell in his chest, but also humility. This was not power to be owned, but a trust to be carried. A legacy, not for him, not for the crew alone, but for all of humanity. The forge glowed brighter, then slowly calmed, its work settling into balance. The newborn stars shimmered, lighting the strange sky with endless hope. The voice faded into silence, leaving only the hum of the ship and the beating light of creation. Elias turned to his crew, his family, and for the first time in what felt like forever, he allowed himself to smile. "We did it. Not for glory. Not for power. But for the future. That's humanity's legacy." The ship drifted slowly, its battered frame reflecting the glow of the newborn stars. Beyond them stretched a horizon of infinite possibility, a universe waiting to be explored. Mira wiped her tears and whispered, "Do you think anyone will ever know what we did here?" Elias nodded. "Maybe not now. Maybe not for generations. But someday, humanity will find the path we carved. And when they do, they'll know we were here, that we lit the fire for them." Sarah leaned back in her chair, exhaustion finally catching her. "Then our mission's complete." Ryan smiled faintly, for the first time since the journey began. And what a mission it was. The crew sat together in silence, watching as new suns rose in the distance, their light carrying into the endless void. Humanity had walked where no other dared, faced what no other endured, and now held the greatest gift of all, the power to create a legacy that would outlive them all. And as the ship floated in the glow of the newborn universe, the words of their captain echoed in their hearts. Humanity had fallen, risen, struggled, and endured. And in the end, when every other race turned away, humanity stepped forward without fear. That was their legacy. That was their fire. And in the forge of creation, it would burn forever.